John O'Naylor.
I have to confess, when I first became aware of this bill, I thought that initially it had some merit and warranted a little bit of a closer look. And so I did take a closer look to see whether or not this bill would actually achieve some of the things that I thought perhaps it was intended that would achieve, and Mr. Speaker, it doesn't. We've just heard a great impassioned speech from Mr. Henare from over the way there about his family's experience from the other side of the railway tracks. Yes, there had been a obviously something that had gone on which was not ideal for their family. In fact, it would have been great if they had been responded to earlier, and perhaps that railway line had not sat empty for 12 years, as he said, before some action was taken. And if this bill did anything whatsoever to resolve that situation, then that would be useful. But guess what? It doesn't. Because actually the issue that he would have liked to have seen resolved would need a different bill, it would need a different set of legislation, it would need a different policy from the organisations that end up, like the railway, who end up owning that land, making different decisions at different times to help that family resolve their issue. Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt that over the history of time in Aotearoa, New Zealand, the Public Works Act and other legislation have been used inappropriately to alienate Māori from their land. Successive legislation through Māori Land Act and its various iterations at different times were not proud moments if we were to look at the history of New Zealand and what was done to Māori and in terms of alienating them from their land. And that is something that I don't believe any of us in Aotearoa, New Zealand should be proud of. But Mr. Speaker, this bill doesn't actually put any of that to right. Mr. Speaker, there are other processes in place, and we're working very hard through our treaty settlement processes to do what we can to at least make some measure of putting those things right. But this bill, in and of itself, does not. Mr. Speaker, it's been talked about that not one more acre should be confiscated, and I just want to remind members of the House that this legislation that the Public Works Act does not allow the government to confiscate land. It enables the government to purchase land. And I just want to go back to the Public Works Act when it was brought in 1981, and the opening speech by the Honourable W.L. Young, who introduced that. And in his opening remarks, he said that when land is required for essential work, the bill specifies that a formal notice is sent to the owner inviting the owner to sell the land and advising the owner of the estimated value of the land. Every effort must be made to negotiate in good faith with the owner in an attempt to reach an agreement acceptable to them. Unless these steps are taken, it will not be possible compulsorily to take any land for an essential work. Mr. Speaker, this is not confiscation. This is about, under the Public Works Act, giving a fair price for a piece of land that is required by the government or a local authority for essential work. Now, what Mrs. Delahunty is actually proposing through this legislation is that a party who owns a particular piece of land will have an ability to stand in the way, to hold, to have the ability to hold the rest of New Zealand to ransom. And so if, for example, it was a piece of land was required to provide flood protection to a significant part of the community, if this legislation was to pass and that piece of land was one of the bits of land that are being referred to in this bill, then the owners of that land would effectively be able to write themselves a blank cheque and hold everybody else to ransom, and flood protection would not be required. That's just one example of what could happen. Mr. Speaker, I can't stand here and support that. This bill may have great intentions, but it's certainly not going to achieve any useful intentions, and it's not going to address any of the historic wrongs that have been done. Thank you.